Hey, it's Vincent here from Vincent Games. Welcome to Modern Living End Deck Tech and League. I've wanted to do a league with Living End for a little while now, and with the release of Amonkhet, it seems appropriate to actually go ahead and do it. I mean, they've got quite a few new additions in the form of Desert Ceradon, Horror of the Broken Lands, so it will be interesting to see how much more punch these cards provide for the deck. So if you're not familiar with Living End, essentially what you do is you play all sorts of 1-mana cyclers like Architects of Will, Horror of the Broken Lands, and Desert Ceradon, Monstrous Carabid, and Street Wraith, which you can cycle for free alongside Faerie Macabre, which you can cycle for free to remove pesky cards from your opponent's graveyard. And then once you've filled up your graveyard a little bit, you then cascade into Living End off of a Demonic Dread or Violent Outburst. So Cascade essentially gives you a free spell from any one of these two cards, provided that card costs less than the card Demonic Dread or Violent Outburst. So you cast a Violent Outburst, reveal cards from the top of your library until you hit the only card in your deck that costs less than the Violent Outburst itself, which is the Living End. Living End then says everyone exiles all their creature cards from their grave, then sacrifices creatures they control, and then puts all cards exiled that way onto the battlefield. Essentially, you play swapsies with your battlefield and your graveyard. So while you've been filling up your graveyard with nasty creatures through cycling, your opponent loses everything they have on the board and then gets to put back very little themselves. You then hopefully go to town with a whole host of things you've just reanimated. We also have Simian Spirit Guides to power out Violent Outburst or Demonic Dread early, and sometimes it's just useful to have as a land because you don't play that many lands. I've seen versions of the deck where they only run 18 lands, which may well be correct, but I'm happy with 19 at the moment. I don't really want to go down any lower than that. It's just a personal preference. The land itself relies heavily on the fast lands, so 4 Blackcleave CLiffs and 2 Copperline Gorge, and then 5 fetches with Bloodstained Mire, Verdant Catacombs to fetch one of each of the shock lands in Jund colours, and then we have 4 basics in 2 swamps, 1 mountain and forest. We also have a Blooming MArsh as well as another fast land I forgot to mention. So the thing you may have noticed about this mana base is that it allows you to have turns 1, 2 and 3 with a land that will always come into play untapped. The reason for this being is you want to use your mana as efficiently as possible, cycling creatures to then cast Living End as swiftly as possible. The longer the game goes on for this deck, the worse it tends to be, as your opponent not only stabilises but then often ends up filling their graveyard if you've had to cast multiple Living Ends, so you're getting stuff back for your opponent, which isn't good. Essentially what it wants to do is put a massive amount of power on the table quickly so that your opponent just simply cannot deal with it, and the best way of doing that is doing it as early as possible. The other cards in the deck are 1 Beast Within to deal with any kind of problem permanent, and 2 Fulminator Mages to deal with pesky lands of your opponents. The cool thing about Fulminator Mage is being able to use him and then getting him back with Living End. It can be quite backbreaking against certain decks if you can kill multiple lands in that way. Same thing with Beast Within. I was running multiple Beasts Within and the full 4 set of Fulminator Mage, but I read PV's article on Living End recently, and as a result I'm trying to kind of go with what he suggested, which is just focus more on the Living End plan a bit, rather than having more of these kind of utility cards. I do like getting an early Fulminator Mage down with the help of a Simian Spirit Guide, but ultimately it's not really what your deck wants to be doing. You want to be doing the whole cycling plan and then Living End, so it is good, and I may go back up to having more, but we're trying this out for now. As for the sideboard, it has some Leyline of the Voids to deal with anything like Dredge or the Mirror, 3 Shriekmaw to deal with aggressive strategies like Infect or Burn, 2 Ricochet Traps for counter spells, because counter spells are particularly nasty against this deck, and a Beast Within for red, 2 Fulminator Mages against things like Tron, Control, where killing lands becomes more relevant, as come turn 3 you can't necessarily run out Demonic Dread or Violent Outburst into a counter spell, so the game does naturally then go a little bit longer. And then I'm trying out 3 Krosan Grips. I mean, they're good against Affinity, but primarily they're there for opposing Grave Hate as a way to remove cards like Rest in Peace. I don't really like just being cold to a card like Rest in Peace, because if they resolve that against you, it's very difficult for you to win. So, no, impossible in fact. So it's kind of why I originally had more Beast Withins in the main deck, but we're trying it out, and we're trying out less Beast Withins in the main as well. So it may be something that I live to regret, but we'll see how it gets on. If people aren't really aware of this deck, or it's not so much of a presence It's definitely not a tier 1 deck, but it can still catch people out. So it's one of those things where if people have more answers against you in their sideboards, things like Krosan Grip might be better to deal with that. But for now, it might just be that you can get away without playing them so much. Because essentially, if people aren't having those sideboard cards there for you, then you don't really need to board in cards like Krosan Grip. But we will see. And I've also got a second beast within in the sideboard as well, as it's a nice card to have access to should you need it. So essentially provides us with 4 things to board into against Rest in Peace, Relic, that sort of thing. So that is the deck, and we're going to dive into a league. Okay, so here we are, round 1 of the Modern League. So we have 1 Cycler, 3 lands is a bit land heavy, but we have a Violent Outburst, which is nice. And the Faerie Macabre could just be a dead card, could be really good. Same with Fulminator Mage, really. I'm going to keep. It's not amazing, the hand, but we do have land, a Cycler, a Violent Outburst, so it's good hand. It's just not the best. Probably going to lead with Blackcleave CLiffs because that means we can control. We can then play a Stomping Ground, either tapped or untapped. Yeah, so we'll go Blackcleave CLiffs. Architects of Will is a reasonable draw. Hopefully start filling up the graveyard. All of Omens. So it's largely an irrelevant card against us. It provides them with value. I mean, it's essentially a cantrip for our opponent. I'm just thinking whether this matchup is actually going to be good or bad. I'm going to cycle the Architects of Will, because if we cycle the Ceradon now, we have 2 red lands. So I'd rather get rid of the red Cycler now. I'd rather keep the red Cycler because we know we can definitely cycle it with our 2 lands. Or if we cycle the Ceradon now and have the a black source come, although we have the swamp, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm still going to cycle the Architects of Will. Yeah. Okay. Play a Copperline Gorge and pass. I mean, in this matchup, the Fulminator Mage is going to be potentially quite useful. I doubt very much they'll tap out from this point on. After seeing the Architects of Will. Oh, okay. Or they're just going to try and combo us before we can do anything. And that seems reasonable. Okay, so it's Jeskai, Felidar Sovereign combo. Take a point of damage. So I'm feeling good about our Fulminator Mage at this point. Just drawn Monstrous Carabid, so we'll cycle that. Okay, so we have a number of things we can do. I think we're definitely going to play the Blackcleave CLiffs. There's no reason not to play that. So if we Living End now, so we could cycle. We could put. We could discard Faerie Macabre to remove his 2 lands. Remove their 2 lands and cast Demonic Dread, putting 12 power on the table. And then they untap and combo off and kill us. So that seems pretty loose. Or we could leave up Violent Outburst so that we can instant speed the Living End once they've made a whole bunch of cats. But that is assuming they've got the combo. If they don't have the combo, then that's also not good. So I think what's going to be potentially better is casting Fulminator Mage, taking them off a land, and then they can't cast Felidar Sovereign. That feels good. So by doing that, essentially slow them down a turn. So they just snapped out of all of Omens. So Maybe they don't have another land. If they don't have another land, then that's going to be great for us. No, of course they do. Didn't think they wouldn't. Okay. Don't see a reason not to play this untapped. I think we have to wait to cast Violent Outburst. Yeah. So I like this better now because we're waiting a turn means we put more power on the table. So if he goes for the combo now, then that's fine. We just let him try. And cycle and then Violent Outburst. Sure. Ooh. So our opponent's going to get annoyed because we're not just going to concede. But there's no reason to concede. We have to basically let them attack and then cast Violent Outburst. It's quite amusing. I wonder how many cats they'll actually make. This is the amusing thing about Magic Online compared to real life, because reality is if they're tapped out, I would just politely say to my opponent, okay, you're tapped out? Cool. As soon as the Felidar comes down and say, right, you're tapped out, I'm just going to show you the Violent Outburst. Shall we go to the next game? But you just can't do that. Look at all those. So that's what 16 Felidar tokens look like. I'm not going to lie, this is quite amusing to me. Declare attacker step. Okay, so sorry, hashtag sorry not sorry. Also, me cycling this one card is going to make it look like I will top deck the Violent Outburst, whereas the reality is we always had it. Is he going to concede? I'm going to choose them. Yeah. Sorry, man. That was hilarious. Oh, wow. Oh, dear, oh, dear. You would be so pissed off. You would be so annoyed after having sat there and made 16 tokens. Okay, so what feels bad against this matchup? I don't think his deck actually plays that many counter spells. However, I'm almost certain he'll be bringing some in from the sideboard. So 2 Ricochet Traps feels pretty solid against them. I imagine they'll be bringing in Rest in Peace, so Krosan Grips could be pretty good for that. I know they play Oblivion Ring as well, if it's this Sun Titan grindy kind of just value deck. So you obviously combos quite nicely with the Felidar Guardian, so you can basically just blink Oblivion Rings and target threats as they become more or less relevant. Krosan Grip could be, it could have a more targets than just Grave Hate, is what I'm trying to say there. Leyline, I don't think it's worth bringing in stuff just in case they have Sun Titans. Again, that feels pretty weak. So essentially the key will be comboing before they do. I think we can afford to take out 1 or 2 cyclers. And I think 4 Faerie Macabre is probably going to be the better choice because they don't have as many targets, I don't think. Again, I don't think it's worth keeping them in just to get rid of stuff. That could be Sun Titaned. or Snapcaster Maged. That would be a good reason to bring them in, but I'm just going to take them out as I think I want everything else except that. Fulminator was good. I'm going to take out Architects of Will for Fulminators. Have less cyclers, much less cyclers, but I think Fulminator fights for what this deck's trying to do. In the late game, that is. We're just grinding us out. I mean, I think the combo, I think what we're going to find is this. If this deck is what I think it is, then we're going to find that the combo element is just one part of it. And looking at this, this hand's great. We've got 2 sideboard cards and 2 land and 2 cyclers. And a Violent Outburst. So we will be keeping this hand for sure. Now the question is, do I open with Bloodstained Mire or Blackcleave CLiffs? I don't know, because I don't want to draw too many lands end step. So let's just cycle in there end step and draw a card. Okay, not drawing lands. So I'm actually going to open with Blackcleave CLiffs because we don't have a Simian Spirit Guide and we want to draw at least 1 land. This could just be wrong, but we want to hit our land drops. Oh, apologies, had to just grab a hoodie. Okay, Spreading Seas. This is not good. This is not good at all. Oh dear. Okay, so obviously we have to cycle in response. Got a land, that was good. So the Spreading Seas is quite good with their, what's it called? Felidar Guardian. That's very good, in fact. So we're not going to do anything. We're probably going to fetch for a Overgrown Tomb, an Overgrown Tomb to get both black and green, as we have the mountain only at the moment. It's nice to have the beast within to get rid of the Spreading Seas potentially. Not paying any life. Okay, let's go with the Blackcleave CLiffs again. This is the problem sometimes with sideboarding like we have. You end up getting a lot of non-cyclers, like how we've got now, which is not good. I'm at the stage now where I don't even think we need to worry about the Spreading Seas on our land. It's just not doing anything. So we've, more or less drawn out of it, so we don't actually need to do anything about it, which is nice. I'm going to cycle the Horror of Broken Lands at the end of the turn. Wall of Omens is fine. I am tempted actually now to fire off the Violent Outburst here, just to bait out a counter spell. Although maybe that's a bit loose. We'll wait when we're not tapped out. Okay, so I'll play Blackcleave CLiffs. Pass. Okay, so I'd much rather now. I think hand is pretty stacked. If we do it now, then at least we've got a mana for a Ricochet Trap. It's a fairly weak Living End, But I'm more doing this to try and pull resources out of their hand than actually to cast it. So we'll play Ricochet Trap for 1. Change the target for negate to Violent Outburst. Remand. Oh, they're remanding their own negate. So if they remand their own negate and I counter it, they could still have another counter spell in their hand. And I don't want them to draw a card. And I'd rather lose this fight now and get a card out of their hand. Yeah. They're going to draw a card anyway, but if we do it this way, then we can make him remand our Ricochet Trap, which is nice. Why didn't we get a Ricochet Trap? What the hell? I don't get that. Why didn't we get it? Either get the game glitched or I'm not understanding how MTGO works. So we should have got a friggin... What? Ah. Bet they drew a card. So if we cycle Horror of the Broken Lands, he'll take 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15 damage. As opposed to 11. That feels better for a number of reasons. The first being, it's likely they're going to have a Wrath or something. Don't really want to add to the board by paying it. Yeah. Also, we just do a lot of damage. So my other decision we could have made there was to just attack, do 11 damage, and then play another horror. However, if we don't kill our opponent, they untap and cast Supreme Verdict, then that's really bad for us. We wouldn't have been game over because we then could have just cast another Violent Outburst, but it basically gives our opponents more turns, more time to draw out of this situation. Whereas that, as you saw, just put the pressure in there. Horror of the Broken Lands is exactly what I'd hoped it would be in this deck, as a way of just kind of closing out the games much more quickly, because sometimes, like in that, you only get a couple of creatures out for a living end, but if you can then pump them with the cyclers, which you're going to draw because that's the rest of your deck, at least you're getting a bit of value there. I mean, 2 cyclers, one ended up replacing itself and one didn't draw us a necessarily significant card, or at least in that scenario, that actually added on another 8 power to the board and just killed our opponent on the spot. So yeah, Horror of the Broken Lands doing some real work there. So yeah, that was round 1. Round 2 will be coming up shortly.